Hi, my name is David Levine. I'm chair of science writers in New York. Um, my former co-chair, Joe Bonner, who is helping me tonight and with the recording. And we're going to start in a few minutes because I want to let people have a chance to get into the room because every second there's more participants joining. Okay. So Happy New Year, everybody. Well, I'm going to start and introduce Susan Shapiro. Susan Shapiro is the best-selling author or co-author of 15 books her family hates, like Five Men Who Broke My Heart, Lighting Up, Unhooked, The Bosnia List, The Writing Guide, The Byline Bible, and her recent memoir, The Forgiveness Tour. She lives with her scriptwriter husband in Greenwich Village, where she has taught her popular Instant Gratification Takes Too Long courses at the New York School, NYU, Columbia University, and in private classes and seminars. She will put in the chat how to reach her on social media and her email. So this is my favorite broadcast of the year, the first of 2026, because Sue has offered to moderate. So I'm just going to listen to Sue moderate. So Susan, I turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to David Levine and Joe Bonner for setting this up from the Science Writers in New York. And welcome. Happy New Year. And I think a lot of my students know that my favorite thing to do, especially for inspiration, is to get together brilliant editors and agents and authors and pick their brains and be optimistic about what's going on in the crazy publishing climate. So today we have literary agents Kate McKean and Pronoy Sarkar, editors Lee Oglesby, Kevin Nguyen, and Sarah Robbins, and Counterpoint's Dan López. And so I'll just do it alphabetically, and I'll start by having everybody talk a little bit about what they're doing. So Dan López, I had the honor of working with you when I co-authored a book recently, American Shield, that was a USA Today bestseller. And I've long loved Counterpoint Books based in California. So could you tell us, I know that you're an author by day and you've written The Show House and Parthauser, Limb the Sea. So a short story collection and a novel yourself. And at Counterpoint, you do both fiction and nonfiction. So could you tell us a little bit about Counterpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. We are one of,
Before you do, if people have questions, we're going to read them at the end and put the questions in the Q&A box. I'm sorry, the chat box.
Cool.
Okay, sorry to interrupt.
That's
no,
okay.
no
Okay,
worries.
Dan. Okay.
Yeah, Counterpoint is one of the oldest independent presses in the country. We have about 30 years of history, I believe. We're part of a larger group, Catapult Group. There's now four imprints. We recently acquired Hawthorne Books, which made the trades recently. So that was right before the holidays. So it's a very exciting time to be here. But we always have been broad umbrella, literary fiction, commercial fiction, nonfiction, of all stripes as well. Traditionally, there's been a focus on the West because we are based out in California. But we do stuff from all over. I personally am always looking for works that kind of give us a view into what it means to be kind of American today. And that runs the gamut from immigrant stories to like rural stories, to nonfiction that looks at an individual piece of history and says this is why this is indicative of a larger trend in American history or politics, etc. So it's a pretty broad list and one that we're always trying to grow. So that's really briefly. You can check out our website to see specific titles, but I'm sure I'll bring some more up as the chat continues.
And am I under the impression at this stage that if you want to get a book to Counterpoint, you need to go through a literary agent?
Yeah, there's very few times when we work directly without an agent, and that's usually like, Wendell Berry will reach out to us or something, who's a longtime author. But it's very rare that we work without agents. It's almost always through an agent.
Good to know. Okay, next let's go to Kate, who is an agent and who just wrote a book called Write Through It, which teaches people how to get a literary agent and get a book editor. Yeah, so congratulations on your great book, Kate. And I know that you have a broad list of the kind of clients you would be open for. So could you tell us a little bit about if somebody has a fiction project or a kid's project, when should they contact you? I'm under the impression that with fiction, someone should complete an entire manuscript, whether it's adult, middle grade, YA, or picture book. They should complete a whole manuscript before going to an agent. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We need the whole book. We need to see if you can stick the landing. As any of you who've ever written a book know that the end is just as hard as the beginning. So that's the industry standard for fiction, including picture books. If you are you do not have to illustrate your own picture book. That's like the only thing you don't have to do. So if you're writing a picture book, you don't have to worry about the pictures.
And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, do you have a website? Do you have manuscript wish list? How could somebody find you?
The best way to send me a query is on the website Query Manager or Query Tracker, which is I'm really easy to find. You can also find me at moreheimliterary.com and all the places. There's like 2 Kate McKeans on the internet, and I'm one of them. So you'll be able to find me.
And everybody, it seems like every agent has a different way that they want to be approached. So it seems as if the dumbest thing to do is to like find the agent's name and to attach your whole manuscript. So you probably don't want people doing that, do you?
No, Query Tracker will tell you exactly what to do. And the reason agents have these different manuscript guidelines is because we all know just what we individually need to decide if we want to represent a book. I was writing on the internet earlier and saying that like it's kind of like a job application. If you just had like one form and one resume for every single job in the world, then how would you feel both as the person applying and the person accepting applications? So that's why different agents want different things.
Cool. Okay, Kevin, I think you first spoke to my new school class when you were at GQ, and now you're an editor at The Verge. By day and by night, you write fiction. And congratulations on all the acclaim you got for your recent book, My Documents, which I saw on many of the best of 2025 lists. And you also wrote the book, New Waves. So first off, do you agree that it seems to me that if somebody just wants to start out, that publishing a piece in a newspaper or magazine is a great way to do it? So I know in GQ and at The Verge, do you ever get like are you open for new authors?
Yeah, for sure. I think for nonfiction, I think publishing in a magazine or literary journal is like a really great path forward. Yeah, I have countless journalists that I've worked with or know, socially that have turned feature-length articles into book-length projects. It's actually kind of like a great like testing ground to see if like the thing that you want to do, it's like maybe the 5,000 word version of it is like actually the limit of that story you want to tell. But if you tell that story 5,000 words and you still have so much more that you want to do and the reception to it is good, like there's a little bit of a shortcut too. You can go to an agent and be like, hey, I wrote this piece for The Verge or GQ or whoever else. People really liked it. And there's just like so much more here. Help me turn this into a book proposal. I think agents are pretty open to that.
Do you know that quite a few of my students have published one piece and agents and editors have reached out to them? Modern Love is the big one. I think I heard there's 75 books that have come just from Modern Loves.
Which is pretty impressive because they only do one piece a week. So I think that, that's like 1 out of 10 Modern Loves has been turned into a book.
Yeah, although it's been going 20 years.
Oh yeah. Okay, 1 out of 5 or 20. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually 2 of my students got in they turned their Modern Love into when they did the TV series. So they got an extra $5,000 for that. Could you tell us a little bit about The Verge?
Yeah. The Verge is a tech website. The stuff I work on is narrative feature length reporting. So yeah, like 5,000 words is kind of like the floor for the stuff that I work on. Not that the length matters, but it's usually indicative of the breadth of reporting and writing that I work on. So mostly stuff about technology, business, labor, immigration. It's like a pretty broad purview. And then I think the weirdest thing about being in like 2026 is people are always like, oh, like, is it a tech story? And then sort of like everything's a tech story. There's always a phone involved. So yeah, that's what I work on.
Great. And I had a student at one point that wrote a book called One Person, Multiple Careers, who said that was the wave of the future. And I know I write by day and teach by night. And I know several of you write, but then you also have a full-time gig. do you find that to be safer? Is it a good balance? Do you think when a writer's starting out to have a full-time gig also?
Yeah, I know that I got into journalism and writing fiction because of the money. Uh, yeah, it's I mean, like, my full-time job gives me healthcare, most importantly, and stability, and I tend to write the books on the side at night, which is, and weekends. It's a busy life, but I don't know, feel very lucky to be able to do that.
Cool. Cool. Okay. Now, Lee, when I first met you, you were at Flatiron Books, and I know you had published my student Miriam's fantastic memoir, A Little Less Broken, about finding out that she was on the autism spectrum in her 30s. And I know we did a great panel together at AWP. And since then, it seems like you've left Flatiron Books to be a freelance editor, right?
Yeah, that's right. I guess in August last year, I left Flatiron, so I'm fresh off of that experience of being at an in-house Big Five publisher and taking all of that to freelance work now. So I work with both independent authors and authors with book deals and/or literary agents to either help them figure out what needs to be tweaked in their manuscript, how can it be better, or if they have something that they're trying to pitch to a publisher and it's just not really working, trying to workshop that with them to figure out what we can change, how we can make the proposal a little bit better, or highlight the things that would be most exciting for a publisher.
Great. And I know that with literary agents, with Kate and Pronoy, I would say to my students, do not go to them too early. Like if you just have a first draft, that's too early. On the other hand, with a ghost editor, you can go early to a ghost editor, right?
Yeah, that's not too early for me. So part of what I do is also helping people get materials ready to be able to be appealing to literary agents like Kate and Pronoy. So, yeah, it is probably never too early to to look into freelance editing. I might regret saying that later, but that sounds right for now.
Right. And by the way, I talk about this very openly, which is that I tried to sell a book for 7 years and had no luck. And then two friends who had book deals both referred me to the same ghost editor who had worked at Doubleday and got a deal from Random House within months of working with her. And now I swear by ghost editors. And I especially love ghost editors who have been literary agents or editors recently because they know the market. So,
Right.
so you could probably help people, with proposals or comp titles or, like details of what they need before they go to an agent, right?
Right, it's all the business stuff. So from your writing group or from other writers, you're going to be able to get that kind of feedback on the storytelling and what needs to change in the narrative. But from somebody like me, you can really get the how to make your book a business item or how to make it something that a publisher will want to buy and sell. So that's the kind of expertise that I am sharing as much as I can.
Fantastic. And Sarah, I used to think of Abrams as the art book publisher. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing all these great memoirs and novels. So, how long ago did you guys expand?
Abrams was the premier art book publisher of the United States, which began 75 years ago. But since then, we've been publishing basically everything. Our kids program developed first after adult art, but ever since 2015-ish, we've been doing a lot of different memoir, narrative nonfiction, some literary and upmarket fiction, and we're now actually expanding into a new division that's going to do very commercial fiction. So we're trying to do basically everything.
And you said you've done a lot of nonfiction. So, and you're one of the few people who I was very excited that you're still open for memoirs because memoirs have been a tough sell lately for some publishers. But you've sounded like if you've had several that have done well.
I love memoir. I did Dylan Mulvaney's memoir. I've done a lot of very literary memoir. It's one of my favorite ways to tell stories through reality. But yeah, I do exclusively nonfiction. I do a mix of memoir and narrative nonfiction, and very occasionally a gift book for fun, just to keep it light.
And am I correct that, like Counterpoint, somebody would need a literary agent before they would contact you?
Yes, though I do reach out to people on my own pretty often.
Okay, great to know. Now, Pronoy, when I first met you, you were zooming into my classes when you were a book editor at Little Brown and at St. Martin's, and then you've recently made the switch to being a literary agent. And if I'm correct, you're specializing in nonfiction.
That's right. All areas of
And
nonfiction, expert-driven nonfiction at the George Borchardt Agency.
okay, and so at this point, do you agree that somebody should wait to come to you if they want you to be their agent? They should wait until they have a complete proposal, or if somebody publishes an article, is that too soon to get in touch with you?
It really depends. So I do predominantly expert-driven nonfiction in history, current affairs, science. Um, Earlier, someone mentioned having a job. I think all of my authors tend to be professionals or experts in some degree in their fields. That includes journalists and that includes academics. Um, so it really just depends on the nature of the project. I don't traditionally do memoir, but I have done personal ways in. And then what Lee was saying, I mean, I do think what is also very important is as someone who was an editor, and Lee can speak to this, she was an editor herself, and as someone who acquired books for many years and now as an agent, one thing that editors or ghost editors that can provide are also, and what's so important in this process is that they know what editors and editorial meetings are going through, what they have to do internally to have conversations to acquire books, and what ghost editors can provide as not only for their authors, but also for authors who are looking to get agents, is presenting material that an agent can present to an editor that the editor can use to present in-house. And that sort of internal, it's often very opaque what that process entails, but ghost editors with experience in the big five or even within independent publishing, but just some publishing experience in their back pocket have access to the kinds of information that a proposal, given the topic and given the category, would require and would help the agent. And I sold a book, to Hachette last fall and actually called a ghost editor to help me because, I don't have time anymore to edit like I used to. And so, that's someone who used to work for years in the big five and was able to put the proposal in shape. And their guidance was absolutely instrumental in getting that book or getting that proposal in shape, and then it sold.
Fantastic. Okay, now I want to ask you guys for advice because it's the new year and I know it's a very frustrating publishing market right this minute. And I have a lot of students that are having trouble landing literary agents and book deals. So let's talk about what they could do to make their writing better and to get a yes. So Dan, because you write fiction and Counterpoint does a lot of great fiction, what kind of advice do you give to people that have either a short story collection or a novel that they want to publish? Do you, I don't know, I have a lot of students that are getting MFAs or that are taking writing classes. They do writing workshops to improve their work. And again, there's also the option of their ghost editors who specialize in fiction. So what do you say to somebody who maybe has a manuscript that they're not able to get a literary agent yet? So what's the next step aside from, like, you don't want to give up, but you don't want to, bang your head against the wall if all the agents are
Right.
saying no. So how do you improve the project?
I mean, it's tough. It's obviously going to depend on the individual project. With short story collections, it's really tough. We acquire very few of them. I mean, we do get some, but it's usually much harder. And it's just because it's a small market. People don't buy short story collections. It's tough. But I would say the broad thing always is you have to have like authenticity in your story and just really believe in the story you're telling. That sounds very like, sure, okay, but you are the one that's going to have to believe in this. And as I say, everything in publishing is sales. So it's a little bit like what Pronoy was saying, that when we want to acquire something, we have to convince a lot of people up the chain to take a risk on this. You're not a risk, but you take an investment on it. We're going to spend the 2 years to develop this and to put it out and then hopefully in paperback, et cetera, et cetera. So that enthusiasm starts with the author, and that enthusiasm has to be conveyed. The writing has to be good. The writing has to match the right editor, et cetera, et cetera. But at the core of it, there has to be this, like, you have to really believe in your work. So like that's the creative side. The other side is get in front of as many people as you can. And you do that, like you're saying, through writing classes, through open mics. If there's a good scene for that by you, you can go and meet writers, you can present new material, join a writing group, like all those kind of things that kind of get you in the mix of the literary community where you're at are really helpful because through that you will meet people who maybe you vibe with on a creative level and they can help you with your work. Or you might meet an editor, you might meet an agent, or you might meet like an assistant that's going to become a junior agent soon. And they're like, oh yeah, I remember when I saw you at that thing and it was great. And I love, vampire, robot, sci-fi, whatever, et cetera, books like you're writing, and I'm going to publish it. So you never know where the opportunities are going to come from. So you have to, one, believe in your work and really believe in it, like get behind it, be its greatest champion. And two, put yourself out there with as many people as possible so that you can kind of do the work for when the moment of like serendipity happens, you're ready to take advantage of it.
Now, here's something interesting that I found, which is I've had several students who have published nonfiction, and at the bottom in their little bio, they've said, I'm working on a novel, or I'm working on a middle grade book, or I'm working on a young adult novel, and they've had editors and agents contact them and sell their books that way, especially if there's some autobiographical element in the fiction. Like, for example, one of my students who sold a book to Random House, the novel had to do with the missing father, and that was based on a true story in her life. So she sold a piece to the New York Times Magazine. And her editor at Random House actually said that the fact that a fiction writer could sell a piece to the New York Times really made a huge impression on her. So have you found that with fiction, that people who are able to get clips on their own that are connected to the work, that might help?
Yeah, anything that kind of connects you, anything that can be kind of a data point. We talk about kind of like ammunition when you're going out and you're trying to sell audio rights, you're trying to place for serial, etc. Or getting the bookstores interested. Like, so any kind of thing we can get, a blurb, a thing you've published on a similar topic, all those kind of things are helpful. I don't have a ton of authors that do both fiction and nonfiction. Counterpoint has a fair number of people that go back and forth between the two. But me personally, I don't have a lot. And it's not, I wouldn't say for me like it helps or hurts. Like I wouldn't look at a nonfiction proposal from one of my fiction writers and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna look at this extra carefully or I'm gonna ignore this, whatever. I'm gonna approach it like I would anything else because it really is two very different disciplines. If you wrote autofiction and now you're writing a memoir, okay, that's a little different. There's probably a lot of overlap there. But if you wrote a World War II novel and now you're coming to me with like a proposal on technology used in World War II, like there might be some overlap, but it's going to be very different, and the audiences are going to probably be very different for that. So it's helpful in that it gives you a talking point. But for me, I wouldn't say it's like hurting or helping much. It's just like, okay, it's good to know.
Cool. And Kate, since you're the only one here that does kids' books, if you don't mind, what advice could you give? I have quite a few students that are trying picture books, middle grade, both fiction and nonfiction, and YA fiction and nonfiction. What advice do you give? I mean, there are specific classes one could take. I know the new school has a whole program in children's lit. So you actually could take a class in the kind of work that you're trying to do. And when I was doing a middle grade co-authoring one, I read like 20 of the top middle grade books right away just to see if I understood the voice. What other advice do you give? I feel like sometimes people think, especially with picture books, they think, oh, I tell this funny story to my kids, so I'm just going to write a picture book, or they just make all kinds of obvious mistakes thinking it's a lot easier, but they're really very specific in the genre. So what kind of advice do you give if somebody's interested in that?
Yeah, the two most difficult areas of publishing are romance and picture books, because everybody wants to write one and everybody thinks they can. I have written a picture book, which is coming out in May. I have written an unpublished middle grade novel and an unpublished YA novel. And those other novels will sit in the drawer forever because they didn't work, and that's okay. And I think that on top of reading everything and not reading the things you loved as a kid, because those are irrelevant now for the market that you're going into. They're wonderful. People still read them. That's all great. But you do need, if you're going to write a picture book, I say go to the library and read 100 picture books, all published within the last 5 to 7 years, and sit on the floor and just read them, good, bad, and see what you think about them. And in the other categories, you don't want to think about like, how do the kids sound these days? Like it's always going to sound forced. And you have to find your natural voice and talk about things that those kids care about. And it's not just video games and junk food, or whatever you would, the low-hanging fruit, so to speak. But getting to know the market is the most important thing with those categories.
And there's a good organization for kids' books.
Yeah,
I've
it's
heard-
SCBWI, the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. They have their annual conference coming in a couple weeks, and they have nationwide chapters, and they're a fantastic resource online and in person.
Good. And I actually know 2 people who work in the field who are ghost editors. As a literary agent, if somebody works with a ghost editor, is that something they should tell you, or is that you just don't need to know the process?
I think it's fine. It's not like, I don't see that in a query letter and say, oh, well, this book must be much better than the other ones because they invested in this. And the lack of it doesn't make me think, oh, wow, I'm going to have to do a lot of work on this. It's just a nice thing to know. So I can understand where you are in your editing journey, because part of learning to write and writing multiple books is learning how to edit. And if you need the ghost editor at every turn, like I would want to work with you to build up your skill set so that you aren't relying on wonderful, necessary, everybody should have one ghost editors forever.
Cool. And Kevin, since you're the only one here that's an editor, a magazine, has been a magazine editor, I think, could you give us advice on if people want to start out by breaking into magazines? It seems like reading a whole bunch of the publication to get their voice and to find out what kind of pieces they do would be a good first step, right?
Yeah, I give this advice a lot. I know there's like an incentive to go, like, if you want to write a story, to go really wide and email a lot of people the same pitch. But I actually think you're better served, pitching to 3 magazines you really want to write for, and really tailoring the story and really thinking about the way they would approach it instead. I just like, my inbox is inundated with stuff. I actually don't admit this very often. I actually do read every single pitch. So I'm reading like 10 to 20 of these things a day. And it's like pretty apparent pretty quickly which ones are just like blasted to everyone, which I would say is like 15 out of 20. Sometimes I can tell because it has someone else's name at the top or the wrong magazine reference. That happens all the time. I think if you're mail merging your magazine pitches, you've made a huge misstep already. But yeah, I think, if you're someone who really enjoys the work that we do at The Verge, you should pitch us. If you really like the work that they do at New York Magazine, you'll just have the best shot doing that if you can express in your pitch that you understand the values and the voice of the publication.
And are you open for new writers, both at GQ and at The Verge, if somebody came up with a great pitch that you didn't have?
I don't edit GQ anymore, but at The Verge, I pull stuff out of the slush pile all the time. So everyone's got an equal shot.
Oh, that's great to know. And when it comes to your own process with fiction, so I'm under the impression that for both of your books, you had to write the whole book first before you would go to an agent or an editor?
Sure did. Yeah, I mean, I think the first time around for my first book, New Waves, I just really wanted to see if I could finish a book-length project. I didn't think an agent would necessarily represent it or anyone would want to buy it and publish it. So that was like a nice surprise when I was wrong about those things. I will say what's funny is I actually sold a nonfiction book a year ago. So I'm still working on that, and I sold it on proposal. And the funny thing about publishing fiction on a full manuscript, you sell the thing and you're just it's so exciting, and it's the hard work is really over, because the editing you do after you sell the book is much less than you would do with your agent or whomever leading up to it, or with your ghost editor. And then you sell a nonfiction book and proposal, and it's nice to sell the thing, and you're just oh my God, the hard work is just beginning.
And if you don't mind me asking, did you take a fiction class? Did you have a writing workshop? Did you have beta readers? What, how did you, once you finished a manuscript, what did you do?
I would say that I wouldn't take this as like advice. I'm a little unusual. I don't show anybody anything. I just only send things straight to my agent, who is someone that she's just like the person I trust the most. That was at least for the first book. And then the second book, yeah, I really only showed like a couple other readers. And at that, even then I wasn't really asking for very deep feedback. Like my agent is like my person, and then like my editor at my publisher is also my person. And that's it for me.
Lee, somebody just asked in the chat, when it comes to memoirs, are you buying them on a full proposal or are you buying them on a manuscript? And I happen to know that every agent and every editor is different, but when you were doing it at Flatiron, were you buying the books off of proposals?
So for everything I acquired at Flatiron, it was based off of proposals, including things that were hybrid memoirs, but that is specifically because they were, in between a full memoir and something a little more prescriptive or more narrative nonfiction. If it's like a pure memoir, the story of the entire book is a moment of your life. That's probably a case where a full manuscript is what an editor would buy off of. But yeah, just to explain a bit more about the concept of hybrid memoirs and what I was acquiring at Flatiron. It's sort of a place in between. Or I guess a hybrid memoir tells the story of a person's life or a moment in a person's life, and then expands outward to say more about the cultural moment that it was involved in, or there's a little more research, so that it's a specific person's story and then a story of a larger movement or a larger moment in history. And those, have been having a moment and have been doing well. And those can be bought on a proposal rather than a full manuscript.
And if you don't mind, because we did a whole panel about this at AWP, memoirs are really people that are trying to publish, non-famous people that are trying to publish debut memoirs are having a very rough time. And I actually loved your attitude as an editor, which was you talked about how, if I have it correctly, that if you add research and you have more points of entry for an audience, then you could have better luck selling it to a mainstream publisher the way that you would sell nonfiction. So for example, Marion's book maybe wouldn't only be in the memoir section, it would be in neurodivergence or, psychology. So is that something that you can help somebody with as a ghost editor? Because, so for example, if someone's having trouble selling a memoir, could you take a look at it and say, hey, maybe if you added research, that this, you might be able to sell it in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, and it all depends on the specific story. So for Marion's book, part of what appealed to us so much about it was that we were seeing these massive increases in numbers of people who were being diagnosed with autism, and or self-diagnosed with autism. That was really a moment in the cultural, it was a real cultural moment that we were going through at the time. And her individual story was able to speak to that on a broader level, why autism is more difficult to diagnose with women and girls in particular. So if a moment in your life, the subject of your memoir has a connection to something that's in the cultural zeitgeist that people are talking about, or that people could be talking about or are not quite there yet, but like you're looking for it and seeing like you're seeing the seeds of this being planted, and people might start talking about this in a couple of years. Like that's the kind of thing that can make a hybrid memoir really work. It helps with the marketing and PR to be able to pitch stories and say this book is interesting, not just because of this particular author's story, but because of everything around it. Having that extra angle can help a lot.
Yeah,
And yes,
in
it's
my
something that a freelance editor can help you identify.
in my writing guide book Bible, I have a whole chapter called genre fluidity. And I've actually helped quite a few people who have not been able to sell memoirs, find different categories. And because it happened to me where there were a couple memoirs that I couldn't sell, and one became a self-help book that I sold to Random House, and two became novels. I fictionalized them because they weren't dramatic enough. And there was one interesting story where, so a colleague, Amy Klein, who was in my writing group, she was trying to sell a story about infertility, based on some pieces she'd done in the New York Times on her own story. And she actually, by turning it into a first-person self-help book with a lot of research, she was able to get a big book deal
Mhm.
So it was like a guide to help other women, even though she had her own story in there.
Yeah, the pivot to self-help is a big one right now. You do also have to have some reason to be the person writing this book. You have to have some level of expertise or a great deal of research to say why you should be the person writing this self-help book and helping other people. But if that pivot is possible, then yeah, that is something I'm seeing a lot of right now.
Good. And Sarah, when you're doing memoirs, are you buying them from proposals or are you seeing the whole manuscript?
I don't think I've ever gotten a whole manuscript. I've only bought on proposal. I'll say all of those proposals usually have a really meaningfully long sample chapter and or other sample writing that they've done if they write for an outlet or things like you do need to see a good amount of writing, especially if we're going for a non-traditional idea, but still on proposal, never a full manuscript.
And what kind of advice do you give people for proposals? In one of my classes, one of the editors said that people always screw up the overview section. It's sort of perfunctory, but he said because that's the first thing that an agent and editor sees, he actually suggests that you spend more time on that and that you put the overview in the voice of the book so that it's very engaging from the beginning, which I thought was interesting. What other advice would you give people if they want to get a book, especially you do nonfiction at Abrams? So what other advice could you think of?
Something that I've been seeing a lot recently is even our books that get huge reviews and the biggest outlets don't always do incredibly well because everyone's attention is so scattered and overwhelmed. So I think something important that you can be working on before you have an agent, while you have an agent, and through and beyond is finding the niche communities that hold your readers and putting more work into those groups of people that may seem like smaller, but in reality, they'll come buy the book. There's readers outside the bookstore and the library. And it goes into what Dan was saying about networking, but it's and meeting writers and editors and agents critical, but like one of my authors is huge with nurses and that community puts her up even her books that have nothing to do with nurses because she has written about nurses before. They buy all her books endlessly. They put her on panels all the time. Books can be sold outside of bookstores, and it's just about getting creative and then writing down how you've made those connections and who there will platform you.
Somebody just asked in a memoir synopsis, so that would be the synopsis and the chapter breakdowns. Do you care if it's first person or third person?
I don't care.
Mhm.
I think it's usually first person, and that I think that is inviting to me in this situation where I am the reader. It's good to invite me in, but I don't think I care. No preference.
Interesting. And Dan, just swing back to you because I think at Counterpoint, because it's a literary press, you have said that sometimes with memoirs you need to see the whole first draft, right?
Yeah, I'm a little surprised actually to hear so many people that are looking at memoir in proposal because, well, as you know, Sue, American Shield was a proposal. But for the most part, when we acquire memoir, it's a complete work. In that sense, we treat it more like fiction. We want to make sure that you can stick the landing, as someone said earlier, but also the writing is good, the storytelling is good. Um, there are exceptions, obviously, American Shield was one, but there are exceptions where if there's a really interesting hook, or perhaps if it's like more of a hybrid memoir type thing, where a proposal would work. But I would say 9 times out of 10 for us, memoir, you want the whole thing. And that's been true of like I think the last handful of memoirs we bought, they've all been already completed, and sometimes we even like acquire them from another market, and it was already kind of well into the publishing process before we would take it on.
Good. And Pronoy, a couple people in the chat have asked about biographies or science books, and they want to know, do you need like a YU, a platform particular for the subject that they are pitching? Or for example, could it just be somebody who has journalistic background and an interest in a subject?
Well, it's great to hear people want to do biographies in the 21st century. I feel like most people have been moving away from that lost art. I think it's one of the toughest and most confusing areas that I'm always surprised. I know someone who spent 25 years writing a biography once, and asked them how they managed to spend that much of their life on a single subject. And, I don't know anybody else in any other field who does that. So the fact that people want to do biography is a great thing. In terms of whether it's biography, so what's the question of why you?
Well, yeah, like I'll give you an example. Okay, so one of my former students, Kavita Das, did a book called Poignant Song, The Life and Music of Lakshmi Shankar. And her connection was they're both Indian women, and she had actually had a family connection to meeting her. So it seemed like she was the perfect person to write about her. So, that's a great connection. So if somebody wanted to write a biography or a science book, do you need that direct a connection? Or could it just be that you have an interest and you have clips and you have something new to say about either the subject or the biography?
Yeah, so whether it's biography, whether it's science, anything in these sort of areas, what I would say is what you're looking for in terms of why you. Years ago, I remember talking with a newspaper editor, and we both sort of came down on the three qualities that we look for in the kind of perfect writer. And lo and behold, most of the people I publish don't occupy the trifecta. Most of the people they've worked with don't occupy the trifecta, but it's great to find, which is some people are very good at research, which includes thinking, so they're very good at thinking. Some people are very good at writing. Sorry, I had it written down. And some people are very good at reporting, but some people are not very good at all three. I think that when it comes to these areas, what the YU, and the reason I bring this up is because for the YU, I think that adds an element. If you are doing a biography and you've done an exhaustive amount of research on the subject, you know it inside and out, you know what has come out on that person or subject in the past, recently, why there needs to be a new work. If you found new archival information that has not been covered before, all of a sudden you're providing a YU baked into it. If you're doing a book on science and you're a very good communicator on scientific issues, you can condense and communicate and narrate abstract or complex ideas in a very, natural way. I mean, that naturally explains a YU. If you're really, all of those aspects of why you should be doing it should probably be bound together in why you're approaching it. And it just feels like a sort of a natural extension of your interest levels. I mean, if you spend, for example, I'm working with someone who lives in the Catskills, moved during COVID, is a science reporter, and fell and met this paleobotanist who has uncovered the oldest forest in the world by carbon dating, and has been following them around and wants to tell the story of how this sort of forest system changed the trajectory of life and the evolutionary story that we know. And it brings in a kind of personal narrative of what it was like to live with the trees, was able to connect with experts all around the world who do this research, including Peter Wolbein, who wrote Secret Life of Trees, and so he has a very good acute understanding of biology and paleobiology, and so it just sort of naturally just sort of comes to bear that this would be a subject that would be of deep interest to him, and he just knows the category very, very well. He knows other authors in the space. He reads a lot of environmental nonfiction. He reads a
What
lot of
about, by the way, a lot of people are asking about social media. So for example, if somebody has a lot of social media followers or a Substack, is that a way to kind of up your platform?
I think the platform question is always comes up. I would say that kind of bake some of what Sarah was saying, and I've heard Kate say this in the past. I mean, I think right now what publishers are sort of have been struggling with, and what everybody has been sort of struggling with, is how to break through. How do you get attention to things when traditional media formats like the book review or a single podcast or a TV clip or whatnot are just getting harder and harder to be It used to be you could get a review in the Wall Street Journal and sell 3,000 copies. I just don't think that happens anymore.
Well, right, but just for
So
an example, I know someone that had 60,000 Instagram followers and got a book deal from Knopf, and the editor said it was poetry, and the editor said, I never saw a poet who had 60,000 Instagram followers
yeah.
that
So I
actually help.
think
So that could help you, right? I'm trying to
So
be
I think that
optimistic.
I
Yeah.
think the reason I bring that up is what I think, and it's different for every single person. Not everybody wants Instagram. I mean, not everybody is
No,
good
but
at
if you
social
have, by the
media.
way, if you have 100,000 subscribers from Substack, that looks pretty good to an editor, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
right?
But it just needs, I think it needs to reflect and amplify the work that you're doing and help you reach the readers that you need to reach. And if doing Substack and getting that readership and testing out your ideas and people are really connecting with what you're saying, your story, your ideas, then that's a great way to do it. Yeah, and I just think for what people, when they say platform, I think it can mean many different things, but I think it's a way for authors to connect directly with readers and partner with publishers to help them too get in front of readers. And often I think we sort of narrow the conversation simply to followers and not so much about networks and how one can reach. I like niche audiences. I think that's very powerful. And and there's a lot of different ways to go about that. Is what I
Yeah,
was.
what's funny
So
is
if you don't, if you
for
don't
a long time, I was like a very huge non-joiner of anything. And when I started doing books, especially filling out the forms that publishers give you, I joined everything. I think I spent $2,000. I was like every alumni association. I hadn't been in a temple in like decades. I was like every temple. I joined churches. I got involved with mosques. I got involved with every writers group there is, which is like, Authors Guild, Writers Guild, National Book Critics Circle. There were so many groups that I could join, and it wound up helping. And you need places where you could like do an event for 300 or 400 people. So I actually think being a joiner weirdly can help up a platform also. Okay, so here's one of my favorite questions. I'm sorry, did you have something you wanted to say, Kate?
I was going to say something about social media and things like that. And Portnoy is right. It's about not just focusing on the number of followers. Like I have a newsletter that supports my book that the book came out of, and I have a very modest number of subscribers. I have about 30,000 subscribers, and so that is not 100,000, but it's enough in my niche. Like Sarah was talking about, is finding that micro niche of people who want to hear about this one thing. And now I want to try and write a novel next. And those 30,000 subscribers are not going to translate into sales for my novel. They will be eyeballs that will know about it, but I'm not going to say, okay, well then if this 3% of all these followers buy my novel, then I'll be golden. I wouldn't count on that at all. But it'll just be a way that people will have seen the title and the cover of the book.
Okay, so here's a question that I want to ask everybody. I'm typing an answer to this too. What should we never do? That's one of my favorite questions. So Dan, as a book editor, what should people never do? So obviously somebody shouldn't find you on social media and say, hey, you were cool at Sue's panel, here's my novel, and attach their novel. That would be tough. But like what kind of mistakes are people making when they want to do fiction with Counterpoint?
We touched on this briefly earlier that you should not just talk to everybody with the same approach. Like, so basically it's tailor your pitch to the editor. I too have gotten things that were addressed to someone who wasn't me. And I know it wasn't anyone in my company because me and my boss are both named Dan. So even if you get named the other one, you'd still get it right. But they would just like address things to the wrong people. So that's a problem. And if they approach you with something that you don't do. I got a submission over the holidays for like a graphic novel. We, as far as I know, have never done a graphic novel. I love graphic novels personally, but I don't think it's something we're ever going to do. So those kind of things just show you haven't done your research. So I would say not doing your research on the outlet you're approaching. And again, I should be clear, these were for individual people, not from agents. Agents know better. So that's something you definitely shouldn't do. You should not take like a broad approach. You should tailor everything to the person you're talking to, whether it's an agent, whether it's a editor directly or whatever it is. Do your research, figure out why it's best suited for that person. And even if it's not, find a way to make it seem like it's best suited to that person. Because it's very easy. We all get inundated. It's very easy to just be like, nope, this isn't right and get rid of it. So you have to give us a reason to like think about it. And that only comes from researching and pitching it correctly.
Great. And Kate, what mistakes are you seeing? I know, like I said, a lot of my students are publishing one short piece and then they're rushing to agents, or they have projects that are half baked. Someone will tell me, I just finished my novel. Give me the name of an agent. How long have you been working on it? 3 months. Has anyone else read it? No. Have you ever taken a fiction class? No. Don't go to agents. This isn't the time to go to agents. I've never seen anybody do a novel that quickly. What other kind of mistakes are you seeing that, when you're looking in your inbox?
Impatience is definitely one thing. Like everything in publishing takes a million years, and that includes the writing and editing part before you even start the actual publishing part, which will then take 2 more years. So patience is really key. But one of the things I see in pitches a lot that sticks out to me is a lot of false equivalency with like market demographics or stats or statistics, where it's like 55 billion people have bought running shoes in the last 6 months, so everyone will love this murder mystery I wrote where the weapon is a running shoe. And you're like, that is not a thing. Or it's like, everybody in Maine will buy my book because it's set in Maine. And like, those things are not true. And you can't actually derive market analysis from Google. Like, we as publishing people don't even have market analysis like this. So like, when you're trying to show a market for your book, think about other books that people have purchased that you can guess that maybe a lot of people have purchased, because we're talking about people who go to stores to buy books, not people who go to stores to buy running shoes.
Interesting. Okay, Kevin. So again, just because you're the only person here that's been a magazine editor, what mistakes are you seeing? Are you getting people that, as you said, like generic stuff where people aren't really reading your publication first?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of other advice too. People do a lot of things wrong. I actually think maybe I'll just pivot this a little bit. I do help a lot of journalists or people who have published magazine pieces, kind of like help put together. I don't work on like full book proposals, but like if I've worked on a story together, like I'm happy to talk through like how you expand that into a book. And I think the mistake people often make is, I do think like a magazine, I know I was saying magazine stories are like a great launching off point for a book. I think the mistake people make is like they are still different things. Like I run into a lot of writers who think that a book is like 6 magazine stories in a row, and that's just like not what it is. I think the concept of a book, why it should be a book, these are actually like tougher questions to answer than being like, oh, like I wrote one great piece, I will write 5 more and I'll smash them all together and that'll be my book. I think the intention of writing a book has to be more deliberate, more thoughtful than that. And I run into that a lot, where people like the idea of writing a book, but they can't really explain it to themselves why they want to write a book. And I think if you can't do that for yourself, you have a really hard time explaining it to like an agent or an editor.
Interesting. Lee, so I've definitely seen with memoir a lot of people that don't know the genre and that have unrealistic expectations. For example, I can't tell you how many students are like, hey, I just wrote my book, my memoir about how I quit drinking for 3 months. And I'm like, okay, go to Barnes and Noble or to a bookstore, any bookstore, and go to the shelf that says that, where there's 10,000 addiction books where people have quit drinking, and how is yours different? Or what are you adding to the conversation? So what other mistakes are you seeing, especially, you were an editor at Flatiron and now you're freelancing, and you're doing, I've sent you a lot of memoirs. So what other mistakes are you seeing where people really aren't understanding what the market needs or wants right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know we spoke about this already a little bit, the why you question, but that also applies for a lot of memoirs. Like, why is a specific story about a fraught relationship between a mother and a daughter? Like, what makes that interesting and different from the, dozens of other books that have been successful with that same sort of plot line? So it really has to be something specific, and I think authors should. Obviously do their research, spend a lot of time reading what else is popular and thinking about what makes their book unique. But in terms of other mistakes, I saw that you answered this in the Q&A, and I'll just like bring it up because I'm sure other panelists have ideas. The AI question, just don't use AI in your writing process. Obviously, you don't want to like have AI write for you. But even in the, having it put together an outline for you and then editing from that, just because AI is a large language model, and like what it does is find the most predictable outcome of a specific question. And that's not what you want in writing. You want the idiosyncrasies, you want something that feels unexpected, and you're not going to get that if you're outsourcing that work to a machine, even if you're going through and then like editing it yourself or like adding your own touches to it afterwards. Like that baseline is still going to be generic. And AI definitely has a voice that like I think more and more of us are starting to be able to see and pick up on the little ticks of AI writing. Like that's visible to people.
Yeah, most of the editors who are zooming into my class, newspaper, magazine, and books are saying that if it looks like you've written or edited anything with AI, we're not going to work with you. So has anybody heard otherwise? Yeah, so it's not a good thing. Okay, Sarah. So what kind of mistakes are you seeing? So you're seeing projects that have already gone through a literary agent, they're getting to you, and yet I'm sure you're still turning down a lot of what you're seeing. So what kind of mistakes are you seeing? Are they just not original enough, or are you seeing people that don't have enough platform to write about the topic they choose?
I think this kind of goes along with a lot of what's already been said, especially about market and how people are marketing themselves. Bad comps are a huge turnoff, and especially really, really famous big books that are kind of old being your primary comp makes me concerned that you are completely don't know anything about the market and are being really unrealistic. You did not write the next Radium Girls. And also that's really old by now. And this is absolutely not educated by Tara Westover. And you can't keep telling me it will be. But I would rather, even if you're going to show me 1,000 books that sold 2,000 copies, but are really getting at the heart of what you're writing about, that proves to me you care and really did research and are really trying to find where you'd belong in a bookstore instead of telling me it's educated again, even though it's not related to that at all other than being a memoir. I will say on AI, I just want to stress, while I'm sure many people here would say I would never use that to do my writing, don't let it do your research either. It makes things up. So don't think you're saving yourself time by doing comp research with ChatGPT. It invents books that aren't real, and you've made your day harder, actually.
Good. Pronoy, as a literary agent, what kind of mistakes are you seeing? Are people contacting you too soon? Are they not doing enough research? Are you seeing like a lot of people compare their books? I mean, I know you're doing a nonfiction, but this is like Eat, Pray, Love, or this is like Malcolm. This is The Tipping Point, or using sort of old comps.
Yeah, so I've said this on many panels, so I apologize people who heard this before. I have said the book should always be the last thing you do. If this is an idea that you truly believe is your book, and you've tried to write a 5,000 word article for Kevin, and he accepted it, and it's on bananas. Shout out to anybody who gets that joke. And you're like, you know what? I still got more to say about bananas, the geopolitical situation, the history. There's a whole other aspect of it. Then do it. But if it's a 5,000 word piece and you've moved on to oranges, then it's not your book. So what I often see is people thinking the first idea I have, I'm going to spend a lot of time writing a book. Writing a book is extremely hard. These are all people who work on books. I've worked with people who've written many books. It is painful to work on the fifth book. It's painful to work on the first book. It is hard business. And so I think you should I've said this so many times, the book should be, you can't find any other format in which to express it. It has to be 60, 70, 80,000 words. It is fully developed. It is just something that has to be done in that format. And I think that adds to the urgency of it, the need of it, your passion of it, all of it adds up, because if you can do it in 3,000 words, it's not a book. If you only care about it for 2 months, it's not a book. So that's one thing. The second thing I'll say is, assuming that being the case, that this is your book, the one thing that I often get that I find very funny, it adds to the comp thing. Some of the other things is people who are sort of selling the idea that you're interested in someone once told me, pitched me and said, "Are you interested in publishing a Pulitzer Prize winner?" Well, here you are. Here I am. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, tell me what it is, what this is about, and why you're doing it. Comparing yourself to Fitzgerald or Tara Westover, I mean, it's not interesting. Like, just tell me what the pitch is, what the hook is, what's the angle, what are you trying to do? And humility, let your project speak for itself, let your work speak for itself. And often people are trying to overcompensate by comparing themselves to things that don't really matter and underestimating the power of just saying, look, I think a lot of people miss that when you're reaching out to people like any of us at any stage, what you really want is, even if we say no, to have a open dialogue. What you don't want is people to just move on, right? So whether you call Dan Pronoy or try to pitch a modern love story to the Verge, like, all of these things are just making us move on. What you really want to do is, like, you want people to say, pause, read it, and say, it might not be for me, but try me again. Or, you know what? Let's have a conversation about this. And I think the best way to do that is you're really trying to get people to respond to what you're doing. They see that what you're trying to do is authentic. They see what you're trying to do. You have a real good understanding of what you're trying to do. Maybe you're still trying to figure it out, but you know what you're trying to do. You know this is the right person to see it. And you're open to collaborating on whatever the potential presents itself. Maybe it has to evolve, whatever, but you are showing a willingness and a commitment to trying to figure that out. And I think that's ultimately what is good for everybody in the long term, to create those kinds of relationships and that kind of binding that ultimately will lead to opportunities down the line. And I've certainly been in touch with
last
people.
question for everybody. Two quick last questions. How can we get in touch with you? Meaning, where can we follow you on social media? How can we get in touch with you? For example, the people that are doing ghost editing, and also what's exciting that you're working on right now. So Dan, what social media can we follow you on?
I'm not too on social media. I guess Instagram would probably be the closest. Though I mostly just don't do anything on social media. But
Okay,
you can also find my information on the Counterpoint website. My email is dan.lopez@counterpointpress.com. You can always email me there.
Okay, and so aside
Yep.
from going out and buying American Shield, what does Counterpoint have right now that's really hot that everybody should go buy?
Well, out now, probably The Lilac People. It's a wonderful World War II historical novel about the trans community in Germany before, during, and after the war. Based on true story, but it is a novel, so it's a story. So that's really exciting. And it's out now. And then, of course, we have lots of great things coming down the pike, but I will let others speak.
Fantastic. Okay, Kate, so everybody should go out and buy Right Through It and should subscribe to your newsletter. And where can we find you?
The newsletter is at agentsandbooks.com, and you can find all the places I am online at katemckeen.com. And on May 5th, you can all buy my picture book called Pay Attention to Me, about a cat who wants to be famous on the internet.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And Kevin, are you still doing events for my documents?
I'm actually all done. So waiting till
Okay,
paperback.
but everybody should go buy it.
Yeah, you don't have to read it. I just want your money. So
Well, actually, by the way, one of the coolest things you could do, especially if you have an editor and agent you want to work with, is buy their book. And then if you like it, give it 5 stars on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Goodreads, right?
I would love that too.
And can we follow you on social media?
Yeah, I think, and if you want to pitch The Verge, I'm at Kevin Nguyen at theverge.com. So,
And
like
which
I told
social,
you, I read everything. I don't answer everything.
that's
but I-
nice. And which social media are you on?
Mostly Instagram. I'm at K Nguyen.
Fantastic. And Lee, you're on social media too?
I am. I'm not very interesting on social media. So if you want to get in touch with me, the best way is by email. I'm oglesby.lee@gmail.com. And anything interesting that's coming up. So tomorrow is the publication day for one of the last books I edited at Flatiron Books, called Undimmed. It's by Cecily Mack, The 8 Awarenesses for Freedom from Unwanted Habits. But it's a good example of a hybrid memoir in case anybody is interested in what that looks like.
And if somebody wants to work with you as a ghost editor, should they explain what their project is when they email you?
Yes, please. So I am interested in knowing the current status of the project, your best pitch of what it is, and then what your goals are, and why you're looking for help from an editor.
Good. And Sarah, can we follow you on social media?
Yes, I'm super excited on Instagram, actually.
Okay. And what's
I'm
your
Moby
tag?
Grapes.
Moby
Moby
Grape?
as in Moby Dick, Grapes as in Grapes of Wrath, obviously. That's my username many places.
Obviously.
Obviously.
And what's the hottest book that you have out that we should go buy?
Um, Outright Now actually came out last year, but is now a National Book Award finalist, Wards of the State, which is about the foster care to prison pipeline. Coming out very soon is a dance and New York City history, narrative history, coming out in a couple months.
Cool. And Pronoy, do you have any books from St. Martin's that are out now that we should go buy? Because you haven't been an agent long enough to have books out yet, have you?
No, but I can say that
St. Martin's, did you have anything that
well, I haven't been at St. Martin since before COVID. I was at Little Brown.
I'm
But
sorry, Little Brown.
the
Little Brown. What's one of your books we should buy?
well, I can say that, but what I will say is Barack Obama just put Ian McEwan's latest novel on his reading list, and our agency represents Ian McEwan, so I am going to encourage. And so it's a great counterpoint to social media because it's very clear that Ian McEwan, even though he's writing about the future, is not online. So if you want to read a wonderful literary novel about someone predicting the future that does not involve brain rot from social media, then I encourage you to read Ian McEwan's latest
And
novel.
Pronoy, I heard a rumor that you'll do ghost editing too. So if someone wanted to contact you as a ghost editor, what email should they use? Or do you want to put it in the chat?
Well, so the beautiful thing about being Pronoy Sarkar is that I am the only one online or available on Google with my name that works in US book publishing. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Fantastic. And I'm Prof Sue123 on Instagram. I have some upcoming online classes, and I'm actually going to do 4 in-person events in New York in January. So if anybody's in New York and they want to come hang out, that would be cool. And I really want to again thank David Levine and Joe Bonner from the Science Writers of New York for sponsoring this. And I again really, really want to thank the panelists. So literary agents Kate and Pronoy, and go buy Kate's book Right Through It. And editor Lee Oglesby, who I just used as a ghost editor, and I can attest to how brilliant she is. Kevin, go buy his brilliant novel, which was on a lot of best of 2025 lists, My Documents. Sarah Robbins from Abrams, and Counterpoint's Dan López, whose books are The Show House and Part Hauser, Part Limb the Sea. And thanks, David. Did you have anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I interview authors in person or events. The next event will be February 18th in New York City at a really great, the home of Chip Fisher, who was the son of Avery Fisher. And I'll be interviewing New York Times columnist Maya Slavowitz on addiction. She's written about her history. She's also considered one of the experts, testifies before Congress. I think that'll be very interesting.
Cool. And I
So,
put my email in the chat. If we didn't get to the questions, I tried to answer all the questions on the Q&A. So it's profsue123@gmail.com. And I quit all my addictions, so now I'm addicted to email. So I promise I'll answer everyone's. Anybody else have anything to add? Any positive energy to inspire?
one last thing.
Okay.
If you this is being taped, so if anyone came in late, and also people who missed it, Joe does a very good job of putting them together. We have a website, and we also post them on. We have a YouTube channel.
Great. Anybody have anything else to add? No. Well, Happy New Year. Great to see everyone. Thank you.
Happy New Year. Good. Stay
Good to
healthy.
see everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Thank you.